Where are my MBTI fans out there? Today we're going to be looking at the Myers-Briggs type indicator, especially as it relates to fictional characters. So I was first introduced to the Myers-Briggs type indicator personality assessment when I was in college, my freshman year of college, and then again it came up again when I was in grad school, and then ever since then I've occasionally gone back to it and sort of retaken it just to see if I maintain the same type. And I have. I've maintained the same type every time I've taken the test, and I found it to be very accurate to me. But if you're unfamiliar with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, it is a questionnaire that people fill out, and it helps you figure out your personality traits among 4 different dimensions. So there's introvert versus extrovert, there's intuitive versus sensing, there's thinking versus feeling, and there's perceiving versus judging. So when you mix and match all of these different 4 elements, you break it down into 16 different personality types. Now, a lot of people really like the MBTI because once they figure out their type, they find it to be very, very accurate to them. Now, that's not true with everybody. Some people are sort of right on the borderline between one type and another, and they may find that whatever type they rank as, they don't totally agree with all the aspects of it applying to them. Some traits from one of the other types might apply better to them. But a lot of people find that the type that they get, that they type as, is very accurate to them. They see a lot of themselves reflected in it. And I certainly always did. Whenever I figured out my type and started reading up on aspects of people with that personality type, I was just like, this is me to a T. This is absolutely me. So I've always liked the MBTI. My personal type is an INTJ. I'm an INTJ, that's introvert, intuitive, thinking, and judging. So I started thinking about, I wonder what a lot of the fictional characters that I am into happen to type as. And it turns out that people have been examining all the fictional fandom realms and everything for years, trying to type out the characters. There's all kinds of charts you can find online for them. There's all kinds of arguments being made for various characters typing as certain things. Now, they're not set in stone. Just like with real people, there's, of course, wiggle room in terms of what type different characters end up being. And so some people may argue that, well, a certain character is more one type or more another type, so it's not totally cut and dry. But when it comes to the INTJ type, my type, I've apparently found that we have a propensity to be villains. The vast majority of the kind of worst villains in all the different fandoms tend to be INTJs. So INTJ, to break it down a little more what the type is, it's sometimes referred to as the architect, also sometimes referred to as the mastermind, so that really gives away why it has a propensity towards villainy. So people who are INTJs, the architect, they tend to be logical and methodical planners. People who are INTJs really like to plan out things well in advance and try to figure out what all the different outcomes of a certain situation are going to be and then formulate a plan for those different outcomes. They tend to be dispassionate systems analyzers, so they really value thinking over feeling. They're very logical, very rational, oftentimes skeptics, and they are architect. You know, the architect is the term that is used for them because they like to analyze systems and are always seeking ways to improve on those systems. So they can be really good engineers, but they can also be better at applying their systems analysis to social systems, to government systems, to how organizations are arranged in working environments and things like that. And the key thing is that they are very dispassionate about it. They're very critical thinkers and not really too much on the feeling side of things. And so they can often appear to be cold, unempathetic. INTJs really don't care for small talk or large-scale socialization. That really plays into the introverted side of them. As a matter of fact, INTJs are known as being the most independent of the 16 personality types. Even among other introverted types, INTJs are more comfortable being alone completely, whereas some introverts do avoid crowds but still like to have a small circle of friends and family and things like that. And so, like I said, there's a strong correlation to villainy there. A lot of the most prolific villains throughout all the different fandoms have ended up being typed as INTJs. Some of the big ones that are real red marks in the INTJ category are characters like Hannibal Lecter. That's right, the cannibal. Hannibal Lecter himself, yes, is an INTJ. And you can kind of see that. He is very introverted and very much keeps to himself. Even when he, isn't in jail and he escapes and he's out on the run, he doesn't bring others into his circle. He keeps to himself very much. He's obviously a very dispassionate planner. He doesn't get involved in feelings very much at all. He's very methodical, very calculating, so it can be easy to see why he would be typed as an INTJ. Along the same lines, for you Game of Thrones fans out there, like I am myself, I wanted to see what character in Game of Thrones I might have the most in common with. And of course, I was hoping for maybe a Jon Snow, maybe even a Khaleesi, but who did I get? Who's an INTJ from Game of Thrones? Tywin Lannister. That's right. One of the biggest jackasses in Game of Thrones. Not as big of a jackass in my mind as Joffrey, but, he was just a petulant child and a complete jerk. But Tywin was a planner. Tywin's methodical, planned stuff out, and very kind of wicked and sinister, did not care about others. He just wanted what he wanted, and he wanted his plans to come to fruition. He didn't care who he had to use along the way. So he was an architect. He was pulling the strings of Joffrey, and he was pulling the strings of practically everyone around him. So yeah, he really played into being the mastermind and the methodical planner. Along the same lines, one of the most famous villains of all time, Moriarty, from Sherlock Holmes, has always been classified as an INTJ. Very cold, calculating, methodical planner, and certainly a mastermind and an architect of some of the worst feats of crime and villainy that Sherlock Holmes ever had to deal with. Although sometimes some people like to type Sherlock Holmes himself as an INTJ, although some people think he's not so much a J, he's not so much a judging, he's more perceiving, he'd be more of a P. So it's not always so cut and dry as whether or not Sherlock himself is an INTJ, but Moriarty is pretty well agreed upon that he is an INTJ. To take it over to Lord of the Rings character most commonly associated with being an INTJ is Saruman. Yes, Saruman, the White Wizard, who allies himself with Sauron and turns his back on the people of Middle-earth, turns evil, one of the great betrayers of the Tolkien series. So yeah, he's a cold, calculating, methodical planner himself, and he's not the only INTJ from Lord of the Rings, though, so there is some good guy hope for us INTJs. Also, Elrond. Elrond, the High Elf, the leader of the elves from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, also generally classified as an INTJ. Some people like to think that Gandalf might be an INTJ. He's certainly a planner. He's certainly methodical, although as intelligent as he is, I would put him more on the feeling side versus the thinking side. He's a very empathetic character. He's always leading with his heart, and that's probably why he didn't turn against the people of Middle-earth when Sauron did. When Saruman did. Saruman offered Gandalf the chance to join him and to join with Sauron, and Gandalf refused, and that's because he always tends to lead with his heart. Despite the fact that he is certainly very intelligent and a thinker, I'd put him more on the feeling side, so more of an F than a T. But at least from Lord of the Rings, we INTJs, we get Elrond. Taking it over to another magical fandom of Harry Potter, well, a lot of characters in Harry Potter. There's surely some cool characters from Harry Potter who might classify as an INTJ. Well, there's two. There's Draco Malfoy. Bitch boy Draco Malfoy is apparently an INTJ. And also Severus Snape. Snape's a little bit better, not so much of an evil guy, but not exactly the most warm and cuddly either, and you can certainly see how he would classify as an INTJ. He's Not so much on the feeling side, much more of a thinker, much more of a planner, cold, calculating, and methodical, and a systems analyzing kind of a character as well. So, yeah, don't get Harry Potter, don't get Dumbledore. Us INTJs, we get Severus and Draco on that one. And maybe the most damning of all INTJ from the realms of fiction comes to us from Star Wars. I checked out the Star Wars Myers-Briggs types to see what Star Wars character would be an INTJ, and it's the Emperor. Yes, that's right. We couldn't even get, the coolness of Darth Vader. Sure, he's a villain, but at least he's the coolest of the cool villains. No, his master, the evil of all evils, the Emperor himself, is an INTJ. So, nothing good for us INTJs coming out of Star Wars. But then to take things over to comic books, of course, we've got the big two companies of DC and Marvel, and several characters in Marvel have been typed out as the different personality types. And when it comes to INTJs, there's not a lot of great stuff in Marvel for us either if we're wanting to avoid villainy again. So Magneto is an INTJ. Not the worst guy out there, not pure evil through and through, but he's certainly a cold, calculating planner, certainly like Tywin Lannister. He sort of wants what he wants. He has his goals in mind, and if people have to get stepped on along the way, people end up getting used and manipulated in service to his goals, he's okay with that. Along the same lines as Magneto, Cyclops is also an INTJ, and that's very easy to see if you are a fan of the X-Men comics for the last decade or so. Cyclops has really gone the same way as Magneto. He hasn't gone quite as militant as Magneto in terms of being totally against humans, but Cyclops is more on Magneto's side in his vision of the world than he is on Professor X's side in his vision of the world. Another character from Marvel who's generally thought of as being an INTJ is Dr. Octopus, at least from the movies. The Dr. Octopus who was in Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2, is generally thought of being an INTJ. Now, it's not all villainy when it comes to the Marvel characters. We also have Abigail Brand, who, if you're unfamiliar with her, she's a half-alien leader of a alien task force, kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D., it's called SWORD, and she's tasked with protecting the Earth specifically from alien threats. She's very gruff, she's very take charge, and she's quite a bit of a loner. Even though she's a leader, she doesn't have many confidants. She's very much an introverted loner, and she's really good at systems analysis, so analyzing the different alien systems out there to see if they're potential threats to Earth. And another INTJ character from Marvel who we INTJs can hang our hat on as, hey, we finally got a hero in our midst, Daredevil. We get Daredevil. You can certainly see the introversion in Daredevil. He is quite the loner of a character. Even among those who he values as his friends and his confidants, he tends to take stuff on all on his own and keep secrets from even those closest to him. He's certainly very good at plotting things out and developing plans, so he can classify as an INTJ as well. But the real hope for us INTJs, the big standout hero of all heroes that we can hang our hats on and say, hey, that one belongs to us as well. The INTJ of all INTJs comes to us from DC Comics. That's right, read 'em and weep, people. Batman. Batman himself, the Dark Knight, is indeed an INTJ, and very easy to see how he fits the mold in pretty much every respect. Certainly introverted to the extreme. The only real confidant he has is Alfred, who is more of a partner who he also tends to keep quite a few things from. There's, of course, the Bat family, the Robins, the Nightwings, Catwoman, Batwoman, and everything, but how much has he always kept from all of them? How many secrets has he always kept? Certainly he can work with the Justice League, but he certainly keeps secrets from them as well. Very introverted, very much a loner, even when he's working with other people. Certainly cold, calculating, and methodical. The INTJs, it's not that they have no emotions, they are just very capable of suppressing them when need be to more dispassionately analyze what's going on around them, formulate plans of how to deal with everything, as the INTJ method of operation is, the more feelings I'm putting into things, the more irrational I'm being. And one of the key characteristics of INTJs is rationality. Rational, logical, methodical planning. That's the architect in them. So Batman certainly does that. I mean, he has a plan for how to take out every member of the Justice League if he needs to. If anyone of extreme power goes bad, goes rogue, he knows how to deal with them. When it comes to his own villains, his own rogues gallery, even though some of them are way, way more powerful and have superhuman abilities, he has plans on how to take them all down if need be, on how to combat anyone he needs to combat. So he's certainly an architect. He's certainly a planner, certainly methodical, certainly introverted and independent as well. So certainly INTJ applies to the Dark Knight of Gotham City, Batman. So it's not totally hopeless for us INTJs, even though we do tend to have a strong propensity towards villainy if we're not careful. We also have a strong chance of being a great hero in characters like Batman, Daredevil, Elrond from Lord of the Rings. So a lot of good stuff can come out of being an INTJ as well. I'll link down below to the online personality assessment that you can take to find out your own Myers-Briggs type if you've never typed yourself before, and also gives very good in-depth rundowns of what the traits of each one of the 16 personality types are. And then, once you know your type, or if you already do, you can check out which fictional characters you share the same type as. So let me know down below what Myers-Briggs types you are and that you share with other fictional characters, whether you think it's accurate to you or not, and just do a little MBTI discussion down below. And thanks for listening, and see everybody next time. Take care.